Everyone to the Tools of the Trade live stream. I'm your host, Captain Cole, and I'm joined by my co-host Trip, better known as Crypto ISO on Crypto Twitter. We got an awesome episode for you guys today, with lots to talk about, lots to get into. But before I get started, would you please do me a favor, smash that like button, make us look good for the YouTube algo. Also want to take a quick second to thank our sponsor Phemex, one of the only non-KYC derivatives exchanges left in crypto. Click the link in the description below to get up to $6,000 in sign-up bonus. Now, the last thing I'll say before we get started here on Tools of the Trade, we are not financial advisors, and this information is for educational purposes only. Welcome, everyone, to another Tools of the Trade live stream. Trip, my man, how's it going?
It's good, man. I'm in the arena. I'm trying to survive in the arena.
Trying new things in the arena. I love it.
Yeah.
Market's been a little tense lately, to say the least, right? But this episode should be a little more kosher, so to speak. We got a good friend of ours here, a man who needs no introduction, good friend of mine since 2017, Avocado Ghost. How's it going, man?
Hey guys, good. Thanks for having me. Big fan of the show. Been watching it all the time, so interesting to be here finally.
Yeah, it's good to have you, man. We've known each other a while. If you want to give people a little bit of background, who you are, how you got into the space, we can kind of kick it off from there.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in crypto since, so it's funny. I mean, like many people, I heard of Bitcoin very early on. I didn't do much about it back in 2012, 2013. Opened a Bitstamp account in 2013. Didn't fund it because that was basically the top of Bitcoin, I think, when it hit $1,000 or so during that first. So I kind of, I thought, it's kind of over. This thing retraced 90%. It doesn't probably not coming back from that. And so I kind of came back to crypto in 2017, and I guess that's kind of where we met, kind of on the forums on
Quora.
Yeah, I remember you were a poster on Quora. I thought, you did really nice job. So joined your Slack channel, and kind of, I guess we've known each other ever since.
Interestingly enough, you were actually the second person in Crypto Insider's Slack group before we even pivoted to Telegram. So for those who don't know, Avocado is OG as it gets.
I did not know that. That's interesting. Yeah, so basically after 17, like many people, I kind of made the mistake of, getting kind of wrecked on altcoins. I kind of checked out until about 21 or so, early 21. I kind of, I followed Bitcoin. I followed alts from a distance, but I didn't really trade very much. I did a few things here and there, but let's just say I was kind of checked out. And so I kind of really came back to the space for kind of fullish time in early 21.
Love it, man. It's good to have you here. Before we kind of jump into your perspective on the market and stuff, Trip, I know we have a bunch of macro stuff going on, so I'd love to hear your take on, this month has been a very weird, volatile, but still weird month. So I'm kind of curious what we have looking forward the rest of the week, the rest of the month, and kind of your macro take.
I mean, yeah, there's macro stuff. We have CPI tomorrow. Obviously, that's the favorite one of crypto Twitter, and everyone likes to make a big deal of it when the reality is a lot of these things, as we know, haven't shown too much delta in the numbers that are reported versus what people are estimating. Inflation is still something people talk about, even though it seems like it's taken more of a backseat. Whether that's on the heels of the Fed losing some credibility or just harping on things that I think the market has basically said, okay, you guys can talk all you want, but I mean, if we just look at the way stocks, equities have performed, right? People are putting money to work and they keep going up. I mean, we pulled back in August, mid-August.
Yep.
Now we've been marching back up, holding above the 50-day moving average on NASDAQ and S&P. The dollar has kind of rallied in the face of it too, which was interesting. But what everyone likes to talk about in crypto land is why isn't Bitcoin performing with stocks, right? And I think that's just been the same story for a while now, just in terms of one, the beta is over in the tech play, right? Specifically AI, the leaders of the market over there. There's less risk, and you don't have all this regulatory overhang, right? Everyone's waiting for shoes to fall. What is the next one? Binance, DOJ, now we have all these ETFs essentially being delayed, which people
To
get
be expected.
over things, and that's just the reality of the market. Crypto will outperform again at some point. But for now, I think like trading it in its own little area outside of these other risk assets has been a pretty good way to do it, just in terms of like getting in and out of these things using liquidity theory, which we talk about a lot. And then I believe after this week we have FOMC, right? So
Yep.
we're going to hear from Jerome Powell, probably hear from a slew of Fed speakers, and they basically just keep saying higher for longer, right? So the market just kind of continues to march up in the face of that. So at what point do you get to like a breaking point on yields and whatnot? I'm not entirely sure. It's too tough to call the top on this thing, and everyone who's tried to call the top on this all year has been
Gotten
losing.
burnt. Yep.
So yeah, I think I have a chart of that. If I do have a chart of the dollar, I can't tell. My computer's a little laggy, but yeah, right. So here we can look at essentially came into this 105 level. A lot of people were talking about this. XO was talking about this. Maine was talking about this. This is basically your range low deviation, right? So now we're like sitting up here and like, can it go higher? Sure. Is it going to affect what crypto does? Maybe. It hasn't, like, a lot of the time that as people have traded it in the past, certainly hasn't like really had a huge effect on stocks. So it's just kind of a data point, things people talk about. So in macro land, yeah, this is our calendar. So for those who are new here, tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. we're going to get the core inflation rate month over month and year over year, so you can see what the forecast is and the consensus, right? Obviously, core is important relative to headline inflation. And then later on Thursday, we'll get PPI, initial jobless claims. I guess this is somewhat important, gauging the consumer going into Q4. And then on the FOMC is on Wednesday, September 20th. So those are like the important things to look forward to on the macro front, as well as keeping track of all like the little tidbits of crypto news that come out. But yeah, quick summary, not too much.
I like it. Avocado, I know you have like a TradFi background. I'd love to hear your take on just macro in general, and then kind of we can hop into Bitcoin, ETH, and other things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I definitely have a TradFi, kind of traditional TradFi background. It's kind of funny because, that's kind of what I've thought about for many years, but trading a lot of alts and on-chain, I've not really thought about it lately too much, but my general sense is that basically I'm kind of not super bullish over the next like 12 months or so. I think we're at the period where the rate hike, has obviously come to kind of close to a ceasing point. At that point, the Fed will either have to choose to basically keep rates where they are or have them come down. Historically, they kind of come down when there's kind of problems in the macroeconomy at large. Unemployment goes up, inflation undershoots expectations, repo markets blow up, like all kinds of stuff can happen in the past. So I think we're kind of at that point where they're looking for something bad to happen in order to start to bring rates down. One of those things I mentioned, maybe something else. So I don't know what it's going to be, but I think rates will probably remain here until that happens. And I guess that's kind of what we're looking out for. So I think a lot of people thought that 23 was going to be the year in which we started to see like a global slowdown and all these things start to happen, but it really wasn't. It was actually a very kind of sideways year in terms of the macro, and like a really good year in terms of the risk assets, right? So I could definitely see 24 being what people thought 23 would be. So that's kind of my macro view.
Yeah,
Appreciate that. That makes sense. All right, gents, let's pivot over to Bitcoin. Now, people are asking, is BTC going to dump to new lows? I don't know. That's what we're here to talk about today. Trip, what's your Bitcoin take? As it stands right now, we had a short squeeze last night. I think we were all talking about it, you and me. That 26.6, or sorry, 25.6, 26 day level. Now we ran that Monday high. back inside or trying to hold it. What's the take?
Yeah, so it was interesting, right? Like, I think I've taken 2 Bitcoin trades publicly, both shorts, just because that's basically what market structure is dictating. But yesterday, we had a pretty aggressive sell off, and like we couldn't really break the 25 like convincingly. And there was a liquidity pocket around like 24/7, 24/8. I think we went to around 24/8. And so we were looking at like 9 billion in shorts down here almost.
Yep.
Where I actually did something right for once. I covered.
Love that.
Yeah. Because I was like, if it runs 25, like you might get an exhaustion point, right? I think everyone wants like current year mid, like running 24. One thing I know in this trading this game, especially liquidity theory, is like price will eventually get to that spot, but it might take a very interesting path because like the whole idea is to try to remove as many market participants or take them out so where price can go in that direction with the least resistance, right? Including like sell-offs like this. And then here's everyone off sides. I was staring at my computer last night wanting to long 25 130. And I was like, maybe you shouldn't get into a trade right after you closed a short. Like, and then I took this up here trying to short them. It literally went up and came back down below. And I was like, all right, was that the run of the Monday high deviation? Pretty tight invalidation here. But there were some interesting things happening. Phemex, I hadn't seen a BTC negative funding rate in a while, and the delta still had about 1.5 billion in shorts on it. So if I look at a checklist of how I trade liquidity, ideally you really want to see, well, one, not negative funding. 2, you would want to see like price staying below the Monday high if you're trading this Monday range. And then 3, you really want to see a green delta, right? So there was a lot of active communication in the tools of the trade telegram around this, and saying it seems strong, so you get stopped out. And then it's like, all right, if it's holding Monday's high, why isn't it going to take the previous week high here, right? And this was a liquidity pocket on the 12-hour chart, which we can look at around like this 26.6, call it, right? I actually thought it could have pushed up a little more. So now people are asking themselves, like, was this the run? And if we don't hold this previous week mid and Monday high, then I think it's more likely you're actually going to go take out the Monday low at some of that liquidity that everyone was hoping lower. So if we look at a daily chart on it, I don't even know why I was on a 2-hour. The computer's lagging a little bit. We can kind of get some context around like we didn't actually take this low out, which is, I mean, I find that kind of interesting, right? Because liquidity usually sits below that, like massive, right? So it literally like stopped here. So now you're trading basically
back in the range.
Yeah, weekly range, right? You took these highs out, right? So if it like this could just be the stop run, right? We don't need to go to 27.3 and 27.2 that everyone thinks. We can, but you kind of now have to watch, like, and I wouldn't be surprised if we just do it like this little area, right? Before something happens. Because you get these impulses, and then, if you miss it or if you chase it, you're going to get this like choppy zone where you're going to like force a trade that doesn't really make sense in my mind. And we had a death cross here. I mean, which it's interesting because it like happened after the fact, but sometimes these are actually bullish. I've seen things trade like aggressively
up to it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, we had it yesterday, and look at the move, right? So like the sentiment was so bearish, positioning was bearish. So like the squeeze didn't surprise me. So yeah, I mean, that's the quick and dirty on BTC, and we can look at the actual like liquidation levels on it right now, and we can see that like you always really
first of all.
What?
Delta flipped, first of all. It's the first thing I noticed.
Yeah, we were talking about how if it goes through 26, you're going to get a delta flip. So now you have basically, well, what is that, 5 billion, right? So here you were sitting around 8 or so. Yeah, right. So this like attempt to short the Monday high, looking back on it, like, yes, it did come down, but the reality is you really got to wait for this, for people to get off sides. So now you're asking yourself, okay, is my ratio favorable where there's longs versus shorts? Like, this was 8 billion in shorts, plenty to squeeze, and now we're sitting at 5. Like, we just ran the previous week high. Is this a short? Like, maybe. I think it's a tough thing to position before CPI, even though it's kind of like a nothing event. There's still like algos that trade around it, right? So
Yep.
Maybe wait on that, in my mind. But we can go like look at the heat map here for BTC, and we can look at the 12-hour, right? Because this 12-hour has been a really good indication of these ranges. And like, we came up into this zone right here, right?
Yep.
Like we hit this block, right? And now we came back down into like this little lick zone. And so again, like, we're sitting between
2 pockets.
Yeah, here and here. Now price is closer to here, and there's a delta that's green. So can 25,650 happen? 25,7? Yeah. Can you grab liquidity and then do the move up here, or even do this? Yeah, you can. So this is like a waiting game for me now, because the Monday high trade didn't work. The previous weekly high could pull back, but could go up again. So if we look at the 7-day, maybe that's going to give us a better indication of like where the true liquidity pockets are. Well, here, right, like 26,650 to 26,8. This is why I was saying, like, if you run this, you start to gap before you get to like a really big pocket, right? So here's your gap. This maybe gets you your 27, but it's either 24,650, which is kind of what I was thinking yesterday, or this. So these are the areas to watch. If you're looking to get into a trade on Bitcoin on the short side, you're going to look at the 26.8 to 27 kind of area, and then down here, and then you look at the delta and see how the positioning is around it. So that's my plan for Bitcoin, basically.
Love it. Yeah. My quick and dirty take. You talked a lot about the liquidity aspect of it, but for me, just looking at this, we had the squeeze. We ran that previous week to high, like you said. Where did price stop? Obviously, at the mean reversion, which is the key June on the 6-hour. And the daily, what I like to get into for swing shorts, it's kind of the Tenkinson. So unironically, we tapped these levels, 26.5, 26.550, whatever it is. In my take, yeah, I think this was really just a short squeeze. I don't think this is, the God candle back up to 28.2 or whatever people are thinking. Can we go up to, that 27K level that people were waiting for a couple weeks ago or a week and a half ago? Absolutely. But, my take is still pretty bearish biased here. And just for the most part, when you get a strong sell down into, macro support, so to speak, right? So if you look at it at the weekly level, this 25K level is kind of just like the key level. This was, our initial wick down. This was resistance. This was resistance. This was support. Now this, multiple taps at support. How many more taps of 25K can we try to flip into support until, we kind of break back down below? The fact that we're below the cloud and like still grinding into it, like we came into it, we tried to close into it, weren't able to, and have just been kind of bouncing off the rejection of the cloud. That to me is bearish. I still have this, 23.7 level as kind of the mean reversion of the entire downtrend from 69K to 15K. If we are going to see upward prices, the 40Ks, whatever they have you, I want to see this level tapped basically, whether it's just for a wick and then you go attack the cloud over here sometime in October, November, and then you close in the cloud and you get your edge to edge set up to 42, 40K. But until that happens, I'm maintaining my bearish bias. I think this low is no longer safe. The yearly open 17K. I think this is like a CME cap somewhere here on 28K. And then, the yearly open is just juicy for liquidity. I don't know a lot of the necessary macro aspects, what's going to break in the system, right? That's going to cause this sell off. But from a crypto standpoint, I think we're at that point in the cycle where we're not bullish, we're not bearish, we're chopping. And my take is if we're chopping, we're probably chopping downwards for the rest of the year. So that's kind of how I'm looking at BTC. Let's look at ETH for a second though, because that has been kind of on the forefront of my mind, mostly ETH BTC. I drew this block several months ago. This to me is still like the end all be all, what I want to see hold in ETH BTC if we're going to see ETH kind of take the driver's seat. We did see ETH kind of bottom first compared to Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin had the FTX debacle. But ETH, as long as we're kind of in this zone, I'm still bullish. I know this kind of looks bearish, like we're kind of going to break it, but we had this similar thing here where we kind of dipped down into it and then we ripped back up. So as long as this block holds, I'm going to maintain a bullish bias on ETH BTC, and that is why I sold a good amount of BTC for ETH over the last month and a half. ETH itself, though, right? I think that's kind of important to talk about. We have a bunch of like different trend lines you can draw on this, kind of irrelevant, but point being is like, you can draw a whole bunch of different trend lines, but where is the bottom? Are we kind of breaking down from it? ETH to me is supposed to be more bullish at this case just because of ETH BTC. And if we throw in Ichimoku, kind of looks like we're starting a downtrend on ETH. And if ETH's kind of the leading indicator, I won't be surprised to see BTC kind of fall with it, right? So a lot of people look to BTC as the indicator for are we going up and down? But as of late, given ETH BTC, I've been a lot more cognizant that ETH can be just as good of an indicator to kind of give us a sense of if we're going higher or lower. And if we do end up sweeping that liquidity pocket you mentioned on 24Ks, I'd be curious to see what ETH BTC does, because my hunch is that this block's going to hold and it's going to bounce. It's going to tap this range low or whatever you want to call it a couple times. But at the end all, this is what ends up holding. And if ETH BTC holds up as we dip lower, that to me is a bearish signal in its sense, because you want to see Bitcoin leading the recoveries, right? I think we can kind of pivot to Avocado's thoughts on just ETH BTC in general, and then kind of how that affects, on-chain, which is kind of what I'm very excited for today, because Avocado, as the years have gone by, he's always like sent me like, oh, I'm looking at this on-chain shitcoin, and I don't really dabble on-chain much. I'm thinking of starting to, but he seems to find these crazy plays and they tend to play out. So Avocado, can you give us your down and dirty on ETH BTC, and then maybe we can jump into some on-chain stuff that you've been looking at lately, and just like how do you approach the markets, right? Like when I'm looking at on-chain stuff, I feel like a chicken without a head. 2017 I was pretty deep into alts and round tripped a lot of P&L. So it kind of like gave me some PTSD. But yeah, what's your take on ETH BTC and I guess like the broader on-chain market as a whole?
Yeah, so I think ETH BTC, I think actually ETH itself is just like a very good proxy for just like alt health, right? So usually what happens is that whenever ETH and BTC kind of go sideways, we saw this like in the summer of 21, ETH and BTC went sideways after that big sell-off, and that's when NFT summer really took off. And so I think there's just a component of the fact that when things look stable, even if we're in a downtrend, if we're kind of stabilized at a lower level, people come back and they kind of want to gamble a little bit. They kind of see, they kind of peek their head out of like the ground and they say like, they look around and they're like, okay, like it's not looking great, but it seems stable at the moment. So, there's this little opportunity in the corner that I kind of want to try and flip my ETH, from 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 ETH or 30 to 6, whatever it might be. And every time it's something a little bit different, right? So in 21, it was NFTs. In 20, it was DeFi. And I think now it's kind of a mix of things at this moment. It's kind of a mix of meme coins, and it's kind of a mix of gambling related coins.
Okay. Why do you think the meme coin narrative kind of proliferated? Do you think that was because of Pepe, or was that just like, waiting to kind of pop up with Gensler talking about, or whoever it was, Congress talking about Mongoose coin or something like that back in the day? Was that kind of the catalyst for this on-chain driven rally, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I think so. I think Pepe, I think myself included, I think I can kind of speak from my own experience with this. A lot of people saw Pepe at kind of a very small market cap, and it was on the radar. And a lot of people, took a position and maybe sold too early, or maybe they said like, oh, I've seen 1,000 Pepes, so I'm not going to buy this one, the 1,001st Pepe. And so I think that kind of reawakened the market to the fact that meme coins and shitcoins, I guess, are, can be a meta again, because they haven't been for time. So, so I think that was definitely like a factor. Another thing I'll say is that Base coming online
Yeah.
was actually kind of a big catalyst. It started off in a very funny way. The fact that a lot of people kind of tagged me and said like, "Hey, listen, Base isn't live yet, but you realize that like it's open to devs. So what you can do is you can send some ETH and send it to this address, and then it just auto bridges you over to Base."
Oh,
And
wow.
so
I didn't know that.
even though it was officially not open yet, it was basically open. So a lot of people started, bridging over there, and all of a sudden there's like these coins popping off, and it kind of felt like you like broke into like the school like auditorium or something, like before like I don't know, like, before the party or something. Like you're just sitting there trading stuff, and you're like, I'm not supposed to be here, but stuff is happening.
Makes sense.
So that's when the bald coin happened, for example, during this period here.
That was a huge rug, right?
It's a big rug, but I think it awakened people to the fact that like there's a lot of crazy risk appetite actually in the system. I mean, that thing did like 1,000,000% in a night, basically. So
wild.
So people started getting like their appetite wet for like X's again.
On-chain risk, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And it definitely helps that I think the people who are left are basically kind of like hardened degens or traders at this point, because like if you're soft in any way, you've probably left the market by now.
That's a good point, right? The market's very PvP, guys. I think we talk about this every single stream. It's just me versus Avocado versus Trip versus whoever else is left, just trading on each other and hopefully winning. But as I've kind of noticed, I know Trip has noticed as well, right? Like the whole idea of derivatives trading has kind of not fallen off, but definitely taken the backseat driver as a lot of these majors are kind of moving in tandem with Bitcoin. And they have beta to them, but at the same token, you're telling me about Pepe and all these other random on-chain coins that just go multiples, right? And it's like, well, where's the yield coming from now? It's like it's from each other. So you got to be cognizant of that. And I'll share a quick just chart. This is the only on-chain thing I really dabbled in. Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic 10, Inu. And if Nick, you're still watching, this is basically where I told him to buy. This is the only thing I kind of aped into because it had a nice culty vibe to it, right? And like the idea of longing cults is just like this tried and true method, right? You had like, what was it, Neo, before it was Ant shares turned into Neo. You had all these like Neo maxis back in 2017, and the Tron maxis, XRP to 589, Link Marines, and then NFT cults, right? Like Miladies. Like the idea of buying into cults has been very profitable for those who are able to spot that narrative early and get behind. Holders don't really care about the price because they essentially match their identity to the token itself, right? So very interesting aspect. So yeah, just showing this Bitcoin chart. This is where I told Nick to buy. Didn't buy. I hope you didn't buy here, Nick. And then obviously it retraced, but this is part of the game, right? This went from however, like maybe sub 1 mil market cap to I think it was like 220 mil at its peak. And that's just kind of where we're at. This is all PvP. This is everyone buying, shilling to their friends. There's a local top, and then everyone's selling to get out, usually at a loss. But yeah, I'd love to kind of pivot now, Avocado, and kind of get your take on some on-chain shitcoins, just because I'm not going to turn a blind eye to the fact that there is yield elsewhere other than derivatives. I'm happily positioned swing short on a lot of alts, but on-chain there's no really shorting a lot of these on-chain alts. So you just kind of either participate or cope from the sidelines. So yeah, let's kind of pivot and see, what have you been looking at lately? Is there anything cool, interesting from a meme perspective, narrative perspective, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So I'll say one thing off the bat, which is that conditions are not good, obviously, in on-chain world, the same way that they're not that great in SEX world, centralized exchange world. So
yep.
Like if you had me on like a month ago, I probably would have had a different lineup of stuff I'm talking about, but a lot of stuff looks like absolute garbage. So I'm going to try to stick with stuff that is, I think, like a better bet from a few standpoints that I'll explain later. But I'll since you started talking about Bitcoin or Harry Potter,
yep.
I've actually got the chart open, and I think it's a good example to like
share that with us if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it's a good example of kind of like what how you can expect like meme coins to work, because when you come from like the centralized exchange world, you're really kind of focusing on you're looking a lot at ranges. You're looking a lot at kind of mean reversion within ranges. You're trying to catch momentum where you can, but if the momentum's not there, like, you know, you're very happy to kind of like buy support, sell resistance, things like that. That is not a good approach in on-chain world as of now, at least, because I mean, one is just different people are trading there. I would say they're way more risk tolerant. And the liquidity is much lower. So, you know, like a buy or a sell on an on-chain alt has a much bigger effect than a buy or sell on like you know, like Cardano or Polkadot or, you know, whatever on Bybit or Binance.
For sure.
It's very hard to keep ranges on chain because the liquidity can kind of just go all over the place. So you kind of mapped out similar levels that I did to Bitcoin. Basically, you know, what happens is you've kind of got this. I don't know if can you guys see my cursor?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I mean, what happens is basically very common. Like you know, you'll have these extreme impulses from a coin. There'll be a lot of interest. It will completely die down for a number of reasons, and something will retrace almost entirely. It will basically look like it's completely dead. And in fact, Bitcoin did. I think it retraced. I may have not gotten it exactly, but it retraced, you know, into the mid 90%, right?
Wow.
So you had to be a bit of a believer to kind of stick with this, or you had to be basically following the project and seeing that, you know, the community was still pretty good.
The cult was building, right?
Yeah, the cult was building. I think I forget exactly, but they released their Proto Gremlin NFT somewhere. It might have been here. It might have been later. I'm not sure. But I think that kind of you know, gave some fuel to the chart as well. So then, you know, you got this kind of large kind of impulse, dies down, gears up for another large impulse, sets a new high. And then you've kind of got this, you know, kind of retracement again. You kind of setting a new kind of range up here where the kind of support is kind of, you know, the old
all-time high. Yeah.
And you basically ping pong between these, and this is a very large range, right? This is like 150% range. And then, of course, you've got kind of, you know, you can maybe draw. Yeah, you could maybe draw more lines here to kind of draw additional kind of levels, but I would kind of just treat this as basically kind of like, you know, this coming to the forefront and becoming part of the on-chain index, as they say. You know, one of the kind of 5 on-chain coins that everybody agrees like they should own, and they kind of have it in bigger size. So, you know, now there's like a sizable correction, right? 70-some%. And as you can see from previous times, like this stuff.
It's not out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it's actually pretty normal.
So what do you think is like the, I guess the average on-chain degen? Like, what is that risk profile, or just like what type of traits do you have to do to like get involved in something like this, right? Like, are you a momentum trader? Are you just like a narrative trader? Like, what do you think is, I guess, the biggest driver behind a lot of people who decide, hey, you know, it's cool trading, you know, alts on leverage on centralized exchanges, but I feel like I have a better grasp or edge or whatever have you, trading these on-chain shitcoins essentially?
Yeah, this is a hard one to answer because one is like the easier part about being like on a centralized exchange is that your universe is pretty fixed. So like, you know, maybe Binance will add the coin every so often, or Perp every so often, but for the most part, you're kind of looking at the same like 50, 100 coins, right? And maybe you focus on 20 of them. On chain, stuff can launch literally every minute. And so your universe can change all the time, which makes it very challenging, right? So one of the things is, I don't know who coined this, but like trading attention, which is basically, you're basically trying to find where people's attention is going to next. And I don't think there's any easy way to do that besides simply being like hyper online and hyper talking to people in chats and following socials and seeing where people go. I mean, I wish there was an easier way to do that, but like there's no Delphi digital report or whatever that you can read about like where the next innovation and, you know, shitcoins is. So so you really just have to be paying like very close attention. So it's very PvP and it's very attention intensive. So, but I would say from like a high level perspective, you can definitely say that Telegram bots has been very much a thing. So I think Unibot was what kind of catalyzed that whole Telegram bot meta that came out. There were so many.
And for those who don't know, just can you give us like a brief rundown? What is a Telegram bot? What's its use case? I only heard about Unibot, never participated. And I heard about Banana Gun or whatever it was yesterday. What is a Telegram bot, and like why are people using it versus like in general? Like what's the edge in using a bot, so to speak? I mean, obviously, execution speed, I'm assuming, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, up until recently, I guess. So Maestro was the first Telegram bot that allowed you to basically trade on-chain coins in a much easier way instead of going to Uniswap and kind of like opening that window and pressing buy and then waiting and then pressing buy again and adjusting your gas. The Telegram bots just allow you like a much easier way to sort of deploy that in one click. At the very basic, at the very experienced level, we've got snipers, we've got people who are using bots to kind of, set specific like criteria to like snipe things, setting high gas fees in order to basically front run other people. So it gets actually quite complicated. I've dabbled in that myself. But basically it's just been like kind of I would say it's kind of what Perps did for like on-chain coin, for basically like for centralized exchange coins in like 19 or so. Like basically instead of just like trading a boring coin and pressing buy and sell, all of a sudden you had like limit orders and like you had you could like scale in and out, you could set take profits, you could
Okay, so it's almost like a UI basically for trading shitcoins.
Yeah, it's like a much easier to use UI, and if you're an expert, you can definitely use the kind of the settings like really easily to outperform people. So Unibot was like the first bot, and that's just like a trading bot. But then people started building bots for all kinds of stuff. They started building bots for gambling. They started building bots for gathering like on-chain data. They started building bots for like scraping like new launches on chain. They like pretty much everything has been almost kind of thought of at this point in a few months. And so there was this explosion of bots of the bot meta, which kept us busy like trading for like probably from I want to say like June to like August or something like that.
Oh wow, okay.
So that was like one of the catalysts, I think, on chain. Then we talked about memes earlier, and then I'd say the last one is probably like gambling. So
GambleFi,
yeah, exactly. So Rollbit, I mean everybody knows Rollbit, so I'll share this tab instead. I mean I'm not telling anyone anything new about Rollbit. Obviously, this is very well known. A lot of people have big positions here. But I mean, I think people definitely saw like the that crypto can be applied to like gambling in a way that actually like incentivizes and attracts like users to come use their products, which I don't think had happened like much before. And Rollbit does really huge volumes every day, and they have great tokenomics. They announced actually. This giant candle right here is where they announced their buyback and burn mechanism.
How much was that candle, out of curiosity?
So this
50%?
Candle, it went from 10, and this is a 4-hour, it went up to basically 17, 18.
70%.
Yeah, 70%. Yeah.
Who needs leverage, right?
Exactly. And it's a very liquid coin, so you could easily shove 5-6 figures into this coin, and you wouldn't really affect the you wouldn't really have a huge amount of slippage in doing so. So it's been like a real favorite of people to own and trade, and it's been like probably in all fairness, it's probably one of the better looking charts in on chain at the moment.
I was gonna say I kind of like that SR flip, and it looks like it's gonna make a move higher.
Yeah, it's actually held its structure, which a lot of on-chain coins have not. You could kind of argue this kind of like double topped, but now it's coming back to this like pretty strong support zone. Yeah, exactly. Kind of, I guess, grab that liquidity, so to speak, up the 20-cent area, and then it's kind of coming back to retest this like big gap that it made after that announcement. So I think
this chart looks like liquidity theory, right? Like I can understand that there's a fair value gap. It comes back to fill it.
Yes.
It sources liquidity, and now like the next, logical, at least in my opinion, would be like run those highs up there, see what we have up there, see what sellers are present above 20 cents, 22 cents.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the reason Rollbit you can kind of apply that liquidity theory is because it is a very liquid coin. I think you have to kind of use different approaches on much lower liquidity coins, but Rollbit at this point is kind of like a mid cap. So I think it's definitely fair to apply like liquidity theory.
So just to cut you off real quick, how important is liquidity when looking at these, shit coins? Like what's your, I guess, criteria or checklist when you're looking at on chain to be like, all right, this has, I guess that says 3.3 mil in liquidity. I can do this much volume there. Like what's your criteria for deciding whether or not to punt on chain thing? Because from what I understand, you're pretty early to a lot of these things. So I'm assuming liquidity is not that great at that point.
Yeah, liquidity is definitely much more of a problem on chain than it is in order books on centralized exchanges. And so you definitely have to watch out for slippage like all the time. So basically, whenever you're buying a coin, you have to obviously kind of look at like the implied slippage. Like if you have a bot, or if you look at just Uniswap directly, you can kind of tell like what the slippage is for your buy. And on-chain guys are also very focused on looking at like how much of this coin's market cap do I hold, or how much of the supply do I hold? A common thing for on-chain guys is basically like if you're bullish on something, you try to get like 2% of the supply so that you can kind of like write it up, make a 2x on that.
It sounds wild. First of all, like how like imagine having 2% of Bitcoin or whatever alt. Yeah.
2% of BNB or 2% of Ripple or something. Yeah, it's a different game. So basically, people want to take the approach of just buying something relatively early, getting a good amount of supply, taking out initials, like securing your bag, because basically there's almost no sure thing on chain, so you want to secure your initials as soon as you can, and then with that kind of remaining bag that you have, you can trade it, you can do all kinds of stuff, you can risk manage it, whatever you want to do. So that's like the general approach, which I think is pretty different from centralized exchange trading, where you've got your setup, you've got your validation, you've got your take profit zones, and it's a bit of a different animal because your take profits on chain are not known because you're buying stuff that you hope prints
new all-time highs, right? Yeah,
exactly. You hope for all-time high after all-time high, so you don't know what your take profits are. You can only really look at momentum. You can only look at kind of what other people are saying. You want to be in the chats. You want to make sure that the devs are not doing weird stuff. You want to make sure that do a lot of wallet. So wallet watching is also another interesting thing that I feel like has like a component in centralized exchange trading, but not really. I guess the equivalent there would kind of be like looking at the order book, maybe, and trying
like depth and seeing who's moving around, basically.
Yeah, like you may not know exactly like who's moving something, but you might be able to see like, oh, this guy T-Wops this kind of size on a Friday, and I kind of recognize that. On chain, you can actually just track their wallets, and maybe you know who the person is, and maybe you don't, but you can put it into like a Telegram app, and so you just kind of get alerts whenever this wallet is doing something, and so.
What app do you use, by the way, for tracking, I guess, these wallet movements, if you do use that?
Yeah, so I use Cielo, CIELO. Yeah, there's also another one. I forget the name at the moment. But basically, it's like
Zerion. I don't know. First time I did Uniswap, I lost money, and then someone was like, "Oh, literally," and they're like, "Oh, you should get a Zerion app because you can track that wallet and you'll know if like it moves." Sure enough, like that night, guy basically went in, collected the money from everyone who put it in, and then boom, gone. So it's I learned about that in a very interesting way of tracking wallets.
So that brings me to a question someone just asked. How can one, spot rug pull, scam shitcoins in on-chain world? Like, what's your criteria for, I guess, avoiding them? Because I'm assuming, if if you're going to play for X's, you also have to take the risk that, it could all go to zero, with that very next block or whatever. So have you, how do you, I guess, not prevent it? You obviously, I'm sure, you don't trade more than you can afford to lose or invest more than you can afford to lose. But what is your criteria, I guess, for spotting rug pulls or avoiding them?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I'll say is you cannot like completely prevent it. So everybody who's done this for enough time has been rugged and probably may get rugged in the future, despite how good you are at kind of preventing it. But the point is that you try to prevent it and you try to minimize it. But it is kind of part of the game. Like if I had to have like an equivalent to like centralized exchange trading, I'd say it's like a scam wick or something. It's like you can get scam wicked out of your position and get liquidated or stopped out, and that kind of closes your position and you're done, unless you put another position on. So that's kind of what I'd like equate it to. It's in centralized world, but there are a lot of tools out there. Everybody has different tools that they like to use. There's a ton of bots that help you read a contract very quickly. They basically point out any functions in the contract that are known to be associated with rug pulls, or people typically they look at a few things. They look at the contract being renounced. That just means that the dev cannot change things around later. So that basically kind of like locks in the contract. So nothing mischievous can be done later. Then the second thing is they look for liquidity locked, which means that basically the LP, the liquidity pool of the token, is kind of locked in place, and so they can't make money by rug pulling you out of the liquidity.
Okay. That's what the ball dev did, right? He like pulled liquidity essentially. Is that how it rugged?
Yeah. So the ball dev, it's funny because he basically said like I never sold the token, which is technically true, but it was kind of a rug pull, because what he did was he effectively kept adding liquidity into the pool to absurd amounts, and so naturally people were like attracted to that, because it's very attractive to be able to ape into a coin that has a lot of liquidity and is going up, because the dev is kind of looks like they're kind of well-to-do dev, and so it's attractive. It attracted a huge amount of capital really fast, and it was the momentum and the trend on that was incredible. It was one of the most incredible things I've seen. But the way that it was rugged was, he just basically, it was not locked. The liquidity was not locked. So what happened is he just took out the liquidity because he could. And basically, the way that he took profit on people, so to speak, is that, when you set a liquidity pool, you're effectively providing a lot of your own token.
Yep.
And ETH as well. But you can do kind of more of a single-sided one where you just provide a ton of your own token. So what you're effectively doing is you're just giving the market, you're saying like, here market, here's a bunch of my token. When you buy it, you're exchanging ETH for it. And when it's over, I have all the ETH, you have my token. And if I want to then pull the liquidity, I can just kind of remove what's left. And then I keep the ETH and you keep my shitcoin.
Which is worth zero.
Yeah, which is worth zero if he rug pulls, right? So
Yep.
So that's kind of like a way that the ball dev took profit on people and dumped on them, even though he.
Is there like a sweet spot for, I guess, adding initial, like what like a sweet spot between like too little liquidity, too much liquidity that helps you like kind of spot a potential rug pull?
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of like heuristics that people use all the time. Like if you go into chats and. If people see like a coin launch that has like 100K liquidity right off the bat, that's like super sus, right? People think that's basically like a trap for people to just put in money and then they can rug pull it there. So people associate like really high amounts starting off as like kind of potentially suspicious, unless you know the project already. I mean, if you know the project already, then it's fine, obviously. But
yeah.
At the same time, if you put too little liquidity, that also means that your chart will be like hyper volatile from the start. And if people snipe the chart, that means that basically, people get in really early. They eat up all of the liquidity to start off with. And then when they want to dump, they own a ton of supply. And so they wreck the chart on the way out because there's very low liquidity to basically sell into on the way out. So they kind of wreck the chart, and then the project survives or it doesn't. So
makes sense. All right, so we had Bitcoin, RLB. What else have you been like looking at that's kind of interesting? I get the GambleFi narrative. That makes sense. Rollbit will probably do very well. It's a like 450 mil FTV. And if you equate that to your closest centralized exchange, whatever, it's probably a unicorn. At least for a 2x. I'm sure that's kind of what it was at 20 cents. But what else are you looking at in terms of narrative on GambleFi or memes or whatever or what have you?
So another narrative, I guess I forgot to mention, was like SocialFi, I guess is what we're calling it now, like FriendTech.
Yep.
So I have this one for like illustration purposes. I've got a position, but it's very new. So like, please beware that it's very new, and the product is just coming live soon. So beware of that. But basically, I'm kind of looking at like I think the FriendTech ecosystem, or rather, protocols built on top of FriendTech are kind of interesting because FriendTech is, has been attracting quite a lot of interest in TVL in a very short amount of time. And just based on, what I'm hearing, like, from people speaking to people and on spaces and stuff like that, there is definitely like a use case that people can use FriendTech for, which basically like Twitter is not good for, or just basically to engage with people. So it's kind of like a unique opportunity where you can kind of engage with your audience like directly, but at the same time it's also very much like a DeFi farming exercise, because they have an airdrop in about 5 months, and so people are definitely intent on kind of like farming this because it's a very interesting protocol that I think people expect will probably be worth kind of in the 100 or a couple hundred million kind of fully diluted value when it does launch. So it's a very easy way to kind of like farm something that is kind of the first of its kind that we think could be something interesting. And to be honest, farming is not a really fun activity for the most part. Like if anyone in the audience has like ever like airdrop farmed, like all it is basically like you're just managing wallets. You're swapping and sending like tons of transactions between exchanges and wallets, and you're using protocols that you don't care about, that you would never use in your life, but you're just trying to generate activity. So like FriendTech is kind of like a little bit more of a breath of fresh air, I guess you would say, because like it's actually somewhat fun to use and you're farming at the same time by using it. And so I think there's definitely a place for that. And like I said, I think it actually has like a decent use case in the sense that people are willing to pay for access to people that they think are have alpha, or they kind of look up to and want to get information from or want to speak to directly. And Twitter, that's not really possible, right? Like you can't really tweet at Hasaka and like he's not really going to write you back, most likely.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember GCR talked about the whole idea of social tokens and being able to bet on human beings rather than companies as like a stock. So it's like, right, that's coming to fruition.
Exactly. Yeah. So FriendTech basically allows you to bet on people. It allows you to like also communicate with them. So I guess you could say there's some value to like their keys, because if you have access to them and the world views them as smart people or good traders or whatever, then that key is definitely worth something.
Yep.
And so when you have value, that means that you can also build like derivatives on top of it.
Okay.
So that's I'm kind of excited about that. I mean, I think it's still very early, so you can definitely be like buying people on FriendTech, and you can, there are a lot of people also like sniping new joiners on FriendTech. A lot of big CT accounts have not joined FriendTech yet, so obviously everyone is very keen on getting their keys as quickly as possible once they do join. So it's becoming like like the rest of on-chain that I mentioned. There are bots that are sniping new keys that are coming online. There's a lot going on there. So that's like an ecosystem that I think is basically something that's new in crypto that people tried to do. People tried to basically make work in 21. Like I'm sure you guys remember, BitClout was a thing back in 2021. I mean, super well funded by VCs, right? So I mean, I think it raised like I think it raised 9 figures in funding, I believe.
Wow.
Something crazy like that.
Yep.
So you can see that, like FriendTech with like 20-30 million TVL is still pretty well priced overall if you kind of think about it from that perspective. So so that's like an area that I think that's pretty interesting, and there's quite a bit of opportunity. I was on a space just before this where people were talking about it, and everybody's pretty excited. So I think there's I think that'll keep us busy for the next few months.
Makes sense. And then I just got a question from Jurg. What's the best narrative for the bull run? I don't know when the bull run's going to come. I guess if we're talking on-chain bull run, what's your, I guess, top pick, Avocado, for like what's the best next narrative for on-chain, right? We had meme coins, Pepe, GambleFi, RLB. What's like, I guess, what's the alpha, man? Just be honest with me. What should I ape into and buy the top on?
To be honest, like, if you asked me like at the beginning of the year, what was the narrative that was going to drive 2023, and you told me like SocialFi, like I would have not have told you SocialFi tokens and like Telegram bots, right? So like,
yep.
I feel like there's an element of like unpredictability to this, but I think gambling, has like a really big market. It's fun for people, and it has an actual use case. Like, people just use it for fun. And so it's in Web 2, it's a very large industry that's, multi hundreds of billions of dollar industry. Yep. So if you have a good product and your UI is pretty good, and you can somehow appeal to people, I mean, you can appeal to the crypto crowd, that's fine, but there's like 10 of us in crypto right now. So if you can appeal to the broader outside universe to the broader world, then like that's like a huge use case, right? And I think if you look at Stake, for example, Stake is like probably is one of the most successful, is maybe the most successful example of that. Rollbit is probably the second most successful example of that. And so it's a really big market, and I think there's plenty of room for new people to come in and do things that these guys are not doing.
Makes sense. So then what else you got for us? What else you been looking at? I guess maybe that's not as proliferated thus far. Because you tend to be early on things, and that's why I'm trying to like get a sense for like, because I remember like you've been like, I see you in these like following these Twitter accounts where there's like 15 followers and you're one of them. Like, dude, where do you hear about this? Like, where do you like dig deep to like get onto these deep on-chain crypto Telegram groups where you're finding out about all this stuff?
He's a ghost, man. He's just invisible. He just lurks.
So I think one interesting thing is like kind of goes along with gambling. So like the ETF, right? The decision coming up is like, I mean, what else are people looking at in crypto besides the ETF decision? That's like the main thing that anyone is the
last catalyst we have left, right? Essentially,
it's kind of all we got, right? We've got like, maybe we've got like a bullish regulation coming up that could be something good, but the ETF is like it's probably the biggest event people are looking at. So there's a coin that is interesting. This one's a much smaller market cap, so everybody should know that. So ETF, I mean, it's called ETF, so the name is right there in the name. But basically, this allows you to take like a position basically on like what the ETF decision is going to be later on. So I think prediction markets in general are kind of like an interesting thing where, people want to bet on like the outcome of the presidential election or the outcome of, it could be even like sports related, right? But in this case, the ETF decision is like super crypto native, right? So it kind of makes sense that, this could be like a very interesting thing once we get more news coming. And I mean, just today we had the news that I think it was Franklin Templeton is applying for an ETF as well. So that's like another $1 trillion institution coming into the mix with everything else. So I think stuff like this is very interesting, right? So like, I mean, this chart, and I'll just go to the chart briefly.
So wait, the ticker is ETF?
Yeah, the ticker's ETF. Yeah, so it's
Genius. I like that.
hard to forget that one.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I like about it is, the chart is like simple. It's like it's like an uptrending structure, right? So like everything else that I showed you guys has like pumped a lot, it's retraced a lot. You've got to buy, you got to hope that support holds. This one is like easier on the soul because you're kind of buying into an uptrend, right? So like I think the chart is nice. I like the idea behind basically betting on like the biggest event that basically we're all kind of waiting for in crypto. And then they've got some other interesting stuff going on with like the tokenomics. They basically have for people who know about Link, they've got like a Link Link with a Q, not Link, not chain Link with a Q.
No Link Marines.
Not Link Marines, no. They've got they basically boost their own. This coin basically like boosts its own liquidity through reflection. So what happens?
What's the reflection? Just for the I've heard of it, but I don't know too much about it.
Do these guys have a Twitter or a website or anything, or like we just look at a chart?
Yeah, they've got a Twitter. I can look it up in a second. I think if you do like hashtag ETF on Twitter, you'll probably find it pretty easily. But I was going to say, so the reflection, basically when you have like tax tokens, meaning that there's a tax when you kind of get in and out of the token, like usually you don't want that tax going to like the dev's pocket, right? You kind of want it to like go back to the community somehow.
Yep.
So reflections basically are tokens where they kind of pay out that tax to the holders. So you're incentivized really to get in as early as possible, because the earlier you get in, the bigger kind of share of the reflections you get over the life of the coin. So this one is using like a link, like I said, a link approach, which basically means that holders are getting paid in the LP of the token, and part of that is also going into the liquidity of the token. So it's kind of like as you buy it, like the liquidity is getting better, you're getting some of the liquidity rewards back to you. And so it's kind of like a nice like flywheel. So like
it sounds very Omish. I kind of like that, right? How many people have participated or watching this here and participated in Gnome? Yeah.
For all the people who know what protocol owned liquidity is, this should be a nice thing to talk about. So so it's it kind of checks all the boxes. Chart looks good. I like the narrative. The tokenomics are nice. So
have you, I guess,
dude, this is like a meme coin.
Yeah. There's the Did you go to the Twitter site?
What the hell?
Did you go to the Twitter site?
They have a website, and it's got I don't know. It's like very crypto.
Yeah, the memes are funny. Like
their roadmap.
Is that Hitler?
Is the blue moon. What?
This is why Nick likes this blue moon shit. Of course he does, Schizo Man.
Yeah. I know Nick likes it too. So yeah, so it's like like I said before, like the culture is like super important, and like the memes are super important. That's like what Harry Potter is built on, basically. So like like the reflections, the DeFi, all that stuff is important, but like you definitely want to get like the community and like and create like a sense of like
wow,
like investing in assets.
This is Kathy Wood of WU. Wait, so they've like created a storyline around Kathy.
Yeah, they've got all the
Elizabeth Warren,
all the main characters. Yeah, they've got Liz Warren. They've got who else? They've got Gary.
They got Gary.
Gotta have Gary.
All right, this is kind of interesting now. This seems like a potential early
thing. This is like the dumb shit that works on chain that I will never understand. But like now, this is hilarious though. This is kind of overboard, but I'll take. I mean, whatever.
Yeah,
Hitler. That's funny.
So
like, You
What
want
is
your
the
token to be
actual,
funny, right? You want your token to like make you laugh like while you're sitting there waiting for like price to go up, and like you want like community. So like, I don't know.
That makes sense. That's wild. Okay, I kind of like this vibe. Just looking at this, this reminds me of like early Bitcoin, just like the cultish, meme schizo-ness of this. Interesting.
your
So you bought
chart?
some of this avocado?
Yeah. So yeah. Non-financial advice, disclaimers, everything. Yeah, I've got it back. So
So the
What's the market cap? 760K. All right, this is like a shitcoin. Okay.
yeah, it's pretty low. So everybody be careful. Like I said, everything about liquidity before. If you want to, make sure you always look at the market cap. Make sure you look at the liquidity. But
so
yeah.
what it like? Yeah, I guess like if you're looking at valuation metrics on chain, like I guess the ratio of liquidity to market cap, it's like 1/7, like 165 to like 765, basically, right? Is that right?
Yeah. That's actually pretty important because like one of the main issues with like on-chain coins is that the LP gets like very small compared to the market cap. I mean, I think like at peak, I think, for example, like Pepe is like a good example. When Pepe was like blowing up before it got listed on Binance, it was like a multi-$100 million coin with
Yep.
like 100K in liquidity or something like that, or it was like 500 million with like 1 million in liquidity or something crazy like that. So you definitely want to pay attention to that ratio, right? I think in this case, what I talked about, like the reflections that go to the LP pool, like that helps like bolster the LP over time. So like ideally, this is like getting more liquid as it goes up.
See, that makes sense to me because like if that's like ohm, it's like be early to ohm, right? And like what was that one guy who made like 20, 30 mil was like an initial ohm guy and then went to butterfly or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, people who were early in Ohm just absolutely printed. It was absurd. And Ohm was kind of similar, right? They had like the crazy cultish community. They built up that liquidity base for themselves over time, and yeah, I think they had some.
So what? I buy ETF and I can like bet that it gets approved or denied and I make money hopefully and don't get rugged.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can just be a trader and you can buy it and you can buy the chart, or you can actually like participate and like go use the prediction markets when they come online, and bet for hopefully a nice ETF approval sometime before Q1.
So wait, was that little pump an hour ago from that thing you mentioned? Who applied today? I wasn't actually paying attention today. Who applied for another ETF?
Oh yeah, it was Franklin Templeton. So they're like a huge, pretty well known. If you're in the financial industry, pretty well known like asset manager.
And when's the next ETF thing? October or something?
Yeah, so it's October. I don't remember exactly.
I think it's mid-October. Let me see my chart.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
mid-October.
So we're okay. If I'm looking at this as like I know jack shit about on-chain, I know if I buy this, I'm buying the top, but whatever. The idea is like being early to narratives, and I know this is something like you excel at. So this is kind of interesting. Just from the standpoint that like being early to things makes sense, and then on top of that, you're this fucking weird lore of
I think I would
Cathie
just
Wood.
buy it because of the website, and I think
Because
like
of Cathie Wood.
Well, that's the thing. Like the Bitcoin website, that's the only reason I bought Bitcoin. And I was telling Nick about it in Serbia. We're like hanging out. And I'm like, dude, check this website. And he's like, no, I'm longing 24/7, whatever. And then I'm looking like, dude, look at this website. It's schizo as fuck. This is you. And he's like, no. Like I'm focused on derivatives. And like that's when I started chilling it. I'm like, buy here, buy here, buy here. And again, I didn't buy until like, where's my chart? Till much later. And then it wasn't until like, I missed those two peaks you mentioned, like the initial pump, this pump, and then like I started buying here, dude, like on this move up at like 2-3 cents. But like it
still
went on.
Yeah. Still made a potential 10x from there, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like being early to things makes sense. I see why Nick was adding me on this thing. Okay, interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, I'll say one thing, which is that basically, like if you remember back in the day when like Trump, I think this was when the Trump NFTs were coming out, or there was like some news around Trump. There were a lot of meme coins coming out with like Trump, right?
Yep.
The Trump ticker. It was like #Trump. And so obviously, when there was no news, they kind of like died off, and so people kind of forgot about them. And then I think when Trump joined Twitter, I think it was the event, these things basically went from like being worth nothing to pulling like a 20x off of nothing, because people all of a sudden went back and they tried to look for like, okay, we want to express this like degen view on Trump coming back. So what do? We go buy a Trump coin. And so they basically went back and they tried to see like what's the the earliest, most legit Trump coin that there is. And so they found the old like Trump meme coin, and they like bought the crap out of that one. So this really,
this goes back to like trading attention, right? That's what you're kind of. All right, so Avocado is trading the attention of, I guess, the general crypto market is the ETF thing, and now I guess we have it on chain.
Exactly.
And you said there's gambling too, so it's like GambleFi, narrative, on chain. Shit.
Yeah, I think the roadmap includes some gambling as well. So it's kind of there's like a lot of narratives with this.
So you have two reasons if you wanted to buy this. Let's actually make it three. Insanely entertaining website. There is the idea of utility. So if you don't know how to trade a meme coin, I guess, then the prediction markets and betting, or you just tell yourself that ETF ticker, big narrative, and you just buy it and it goes up alongside that. That's basically on-chain trading.
So it's like kind of like when Elon had those tokens, right? Like when Elon would tweet about whatever, he'd say a word, and there'd be like, I'm guessing a meme coin over whatever, Floki, what like I forget what it was, but that type of approach.
There was X, which is a famous one. Like when Twitter changed their name to X, there was some token that launched called just #X or #X. And I think I haven't looked lately, but I mean this thing is still like multi-million-dollar token, even though. Yeah, go look #X, and you'll see like the top one is probably still like multi-million-dollar market cap.
Fourth reason Amoeba says you get tax revenue. I mean, that's not a bad point, I guess. If you're gonna go on chain, interesting. Buzz says I can gamble on the market and gamble on the ETF, right? Yeah, that makes sense. You can't get wrecked on this coin. You definitely can get wrecked. Don't kid yourself. You can get wrecked on any on-chain shitcoin, but this seems the most interesting thing thus far that I've seen. That it just rings with my schizo cultish thing, because like I forget who made a Twitter thread. I think it was Zoom or Oracle talking about the idea of longing cults, and that's just something like I've always had in the back of my head, from the Neo and shares days to XRP to Link, and it's like get involved with cults, and like Bitcoin's a cult. It had its 100,000x from inception. Interesting. Okay, so you're saying we're still early to this. So if I buy the top of this, I hopefully will not get rugged.
Are you gonna actually buy?
I will not dump on you.
As long as you won't dump. I feel like Nick will dump on me, but maybe you won't.
For myself, I don't know about Nick, but I won't dump on you.
All right.
Yeah, you like don't sell stuff. I've talked to you about I don't the Tamagotchi thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'll experiment with stuff, and sometimes you buy a coin and then you become a community member because you didn't sell too quickly enough or whatever. But
Avocado does not want to wreck the chart. He's not a chart wrecker.
I don't like to wreck charts, but sometimes this is a market, and you sometimes have to. But it's definitely an area I can improve on. I think it's like TPing sometimes on chain.
So, okay, well, where do you TP on this, I guess? Or how about this? Where do you get in? And so I just have like your idea of like, what is a holding period for you on a fucking meme coin, right? Like,
I mean, a lot of this is just kind of like news-based, like, how, like you go into Telegram.
We're drawing fibs. I love it. Fib extensions, 1.5 mil market cap.
Yeah, I mean, like in the absence of like additional information, like you pull out the fibs, and the fibs are always like a nice little thing that you can look at. Like, your 1.618 is 1.5 mil. Like that's pretty reasonable in my opinion. But then you want to look at the trend. Like this is like a really nice easy trend. So like, is this upward sloping trend line from its inception? Is it holding? Like that would be a good thing for it to do, right? But then there's other stuff like going to Telegram. Like is it like is it active? Is like the dev like is the dev talking to people? Is it are the memes good? Right? Like memes are like super.
Yeah, memes are everything, right? I think that goes back to the attention economy.
Attention economy, like was Zoomer's article, I think. Yeah, if anyone hasn't read that, find a way to find a way to find that article to to read it, because it's very important for meme trading. So I mean, just kind of doing the basics of kind of monitoring the chart, and I like the narrative, and so I'll keep going.
Fair enough. All right, I guess I'll have to look into this after this episode. See if it's worth. I mean, 166K in liquidity. What do you throw? What do you throw at this?
How much of a boomer am I if I use Uniswap to buy this and not the fancy Telegram bots?
Banana Gun.
Yeah.
Can you pull up a chart of Banana Gun? Actually, I'm curious to see what that's looking like, because people are saying it like completely rugged and died.
Yeah, that was an interesting day yesterday. So Banana Gun, I guess for those who are not like in the space, I'm just pulling it up. Give me a second. Okay, there are a lot of clones called Banana, so I have to like find the real one now.
I'm assuming there's ETF clones too, then, right?
I don't think so.
Really?
Not last time I checked. There's one called Pepe ETF. Okay, there is an ETF on Binance Smart Chain, so that's not it.
And this is on Uniswap, right? Not Binance.
This one is on Binance Smart Chain. Yeah, it's on PancakeSwap, but the chart is disgusting, so you would not buy this coin. You can tell the difference. It's basically, it kind of like, it looks like it rugged basically, so obviously that's not it. So I'm trying to find Banana Gun, but what happened yesterday is, so just to go back, like Banana Gun is probably the second or third most famous or most used Telegram sniping bot. So it basically got like a really strong user base because it was, I mean, it's pretty good tech. It was basically preferred by most snipers for sniping new contracts when they come out. So people definitely prefer that to Maestro, which was the other bot that you could use to snipe with. But Banana did not have a token. So they launched their token yesterday. There was like, there's a lot of attention on Banana. It's like one of the biggest things on chain to happen in probably a couple of weeks, and everybody was looking forward to it. People had allocations, and there was a pre-sale. It was pretty hard to get into because you had to do some quests to mint their NFTs in order to get the whitelist allocation. So anyway, so all this comes and goes, and then it comes out the gate. I'm trying to find the chart, but I can't find it because it's a very low market cap now because it kind of rugged. So I can't find it. So I'll just describe it. So
yeah.
What happened is it came out of the gate. It actually had like a really great start. It actually had a really great launch. It came out the gate, wasn't really botted too hard, so it didn't really pump and dump. It went up pretty nicely. I think it reached like a fully diluted market cap of like 70 million, which like was exceeding everyone's expectations. So everybody was really euphoric about like we've been waiting for this. It's a great tool. We've been using it for so long. This is going to be like this is going to save on-chain. On-chain was looking really terrible, so this is going to bring some life back to on-chain. And so, like a couple hours into it, they find out that the fees, the token taxes were not working correctly. So they were not like, basically when you sold the token, the taxes were not being pulled out from the token. They were staying in your wallet.
Oh.
Cool. Which is a pretty new mistake to make for such a well seasoned kind of like dev team, right? So what happened was people started really cheating the coin pretty hard, and then
I love that term, cheating. That's my favorite. Such an on-chain thing I've heard. Like, oh, he cheated the chart.
Yeah, exactly.
He heated it up.
Yeah, it doesn't exist, and like no one says like I cheated like a like a ETH perp or something. That doesn't exist.
Wait, so just hold on. So liquidity didn't it say 168K liquidity? Now it says 171. Is that from people adding liquidity? I'm unfamiliar with how liquidity works, so that's why I'm just noticing the metrics changing.
Yeah. So it looks like somebody bought. So whenever people buy, a portion of the tax goes to the LP. So when you buy, you're kind of like adding liquidity, but you're also getting reflections at the same time. So what's happening is you're just seeing like liquidity going into the pool. So as people buy, it gets a bit more liquid on the way up.
So that's like the Ponzonomics. Okay, I can get behind that. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah. So what happened was they basically announced that like Banana, they were going to like redeploy the coin, and so everybody sold. They took out the liquidity because obviously like it's a flawed contract. And they said that they were gonna take a snapshot and give people new coins, but I don't know. That's where we are. I don't think they launched anything yet, and it's gonna. I'm a little skeptical. I think they really messed up on this one. I think it's pretty hard to like mess up such a small thing that you can like you could literally run the contract through ChatGPT and have found the error that they made.
Really?
So
That's wild.
It's not like a really complex problem. So I think they're gonna have like a really hard time earning trust back. So and the market environment is also not great right now, right? People are generally speaking like not very risk tolerant, not very risk seeking at the moment. So
but a lot of these on-chain coins kind of don't care about, like I've noticed, I remember Bitcoin, like I'm talking about Harry Potter Obama, when Bitcoin was like dipping to 24.8 or whatever it was, like the Harry Potter Obama chart was not going down. Like I feel like on-chain reacts very differently to like Bitcoin and majors going up and down. They kind of trade in their own like little space.
Yeah, I mean, there's always like if something fits like a good narrative or has like a good product or whatever that people like for whatever reason, like that product that token can still do pretty well like in the middle. It's like the way that like Link did well in 2019, right? Everything was going down, Chainlink was just kind of going straight up because like it was like something that there was enough money behind it, people were excited about it that they were kind of like buying it, and so it kind of like defied the whole market.
Yeah.
So that happens on chain too. And ETF looks
relative strength, so to speak.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Awesome, man. This has been a very different episode than what we're usually used to, but I learned quite a bit just from.
I'm like in the matrix now. I'm not even a trader anymore, dude. Bots, like
GambleFi, FriendTech, social narratives, SocialFi, GambleFi, ETFi, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Yeah, this is a space that I haven't really ventured out on the curve just because it's outside my comfort zone. And I usually defer, like even for alts, like I remember asking Trip about NEAR and PYR and Axes early on because like I don't know anything about this. My edge is in trading liquidity and trends on centralized exchanges, but like I can't, just looking at the general apathy in the markets, especially on centralized exchanges, is like people are still trading. That's just unfortunately not in my venue, in my sandbox where I like them to trade. So, I faded a lot of things. I think I even faded FriendTech earlier. I was like, yeah, never mind, no shot. And then I was like, no, like you have to be a power user of a lot of things, especially in crypto. I think that's something that Ansem also talked about early on, is just like being a power user to apps and like even DeFi Kingdoms, whatever it was. Testing things out for your own is the best way to like create an assumption or understanding of something. So to just like fade something because it's foreign to you is usually how you miss out on good money. And I'm very, I blame myself for a lot of fumbled potential bags just because I was, I guess, too arrogant or, ignorant to look into it. So I'm going to think about dabbling on chain. And this looks relatively interesting enough compared to, is this the next, Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic Inu, or Link, whatever we were just talking about. I don't know, but it's definitely worth taking a second look at. So I appreciate you coming on, man. This has been really cool. This is again outside my comfort zone, but like I know I learned something new today. I'm sure Trip did too.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, start looking at those Kathy Woods memes. I love it. Avocado, to kind of sum things up, we talked about on-chain, we talked about Bitcoin, RLB, this ETF coin, Banana Gun, FriendTech. We talked about a lot of on-chain stuff. What would your words of, not financial, but words of parting advice for someone new looking to dabble on-chain? What would your, I guess, primary few, like, asterisks, like do this first or look into that? How would you approach getting into the on-chain game? Or what's your, advice for doing that?
I would say like first of all, it's very hard to do on your own. So definitely find like a group of people, like-minded people that you can kind of like share the load with. It's like an extremely fast-moving space, and you don't always catch everything yourself. So you want to, and also just learning off of other people, right? There might be someone who knows is like, a couple months ahead in the journey of you. And so you kind of want to learn from them and, kind of piggyback off what they know. So find a group of people, like-minded people. Start to learn how to use the tools. The tools are kind of different from what you do on centralized exchanges. So
there's no Hyblock on ETF like levels.
Like learn the bots, learn how to use learn how to look at contracts, learn how to learn what the criteria is for something that's like to check that it's not a rug. Look at a lot of charts just to see like what do they look like. Like does a chart like if you come from like BTC and ETH, you might look at charts that look like they're dead, but in on-chain world, it actually might be like a great opportunity because something just got completely wrecked, and now it's actually,
more attractive.
It's more attractive because like the thesis didn't change, and so it's just the price just got wrecked, and so the entry is quite good. So, learn how to use the tools, look at a lot of charts, and I guess you got to just put in the time like anything.
That makes sense. Appreciate that. Oh, look at it. It's jumping as we speak. That's kind of cool. All right. Maybe I should look at this a little quicker before. All right. Appreciate you coming on, Avocado. Trip, any last parting thoughts going into the rest of the week with, the macro stuff in terms of approaching trades? I know that I'm swing short. I'm not touching any of my stuff. I will look into this on-chain bullshit and see if it's worth a couple ETH or whatever. But Trip, any last parting words?
Not really. I think the macro stuff is merely noise at this point, and like I've really just been focusing on the liquidity aspect. Now I'm gonna have to teach myself how to like get into the matrix and learn how to use trading bots and read contracts. So you're gonna get a lot of phone calls from me, Avocado. I'll take.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're talking about that group of friends, right? Like we're lucky we have you, and that's why I was supposed to have this episode like I think month or 2 months ago. But really excited you finally come on because this on-chain stuff is so new to me. And like you said, finding a group of friends or people who actually know what they're doing, lean on them. I lean on Trip for altcoins. Now I'm gonna lean on you for the on-chain. So appreciate the alpha, man. Appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you all next week. Captain Cole signing out. Take it easy, guys.
Thank you. See you. Cheers.